most data needs a closer look and at least a few fixes. For example, this is a picture of my house. Well, actually it's not my house, it's actually the house next door. But in its street map view, Google Maps believes this is actually my house. Here's another quick example. So this is the Wikipedia page for the Volkswagen Beetle. And probably the most common name for the Beetle is Bug. But you can see here that the nickname is BG. It's just a typo, but a great example of the kinds of errors that you can get anytime humans are involved in producing data, which is always. Let's take a look at one more example before we move on. This is some financial data that I worked with several years ago, and a couple of interesting things to note here. One is that this line here is missing values for most of the fields. There are lots of reasons why that might be the case. This is the type of thing that we've got to look for anytime we're dealing with data. Another example here has to do with what assumptions we might have about the dates. If you look at these, we might assume that this actually means August 4th, 2008. Certainly if you're an American, that's the type of assumption you'd make. But then we get to dates like this, and there's actually another example here, where it becomes pretty clear that this is probably a date format in which the day comes first. So we've got to be careful about any assumptions we bring with us into a data wrangling task. So let's go ahead and spell this out. We need to assess our data in order to test assumptions about the values that are there, the data types for those values, and the shape of our data. We also need to identify errors or outliers in our data. We're going to look at several ways of testing our data to see whether there are errors present or whether we have data that's really outside the range of expected values. And finally, we need to assess whether there are any missing values within our data. In addition to all of this, we also need to make sure that our data will support the types of queries that we need to make. The idea here is to eliminate surprises leading to bad analysis later. We'll go into all of this in Lesson 3, but before we can clean any data, we need to make sure we know how to gather data. And that's what we're going to be looking at in the rest of this lesson and the lesson that follows.